Good afternoon and welcome to the FX Daily Roundup. And we are seeing some interesting movements. We are seeing the dollar CAD move off of those lows. Actually, we've got here on the daily chart. We had this bias chart support, I think since Thursday of last week, this 3043. If you're with ForexAnalytix, I already posted the analysis last night saying, hey, 30 right now the dollar CAD's holding down the fort at 3043, and you can see that hit right to the pip. We talked about how this market really sold off, and I was, mentioned how we just had not even been able to rally, but we would see if the 3043 would be able to go on and hold, and then we had our bias chart resistance today at 3088. Actually, I apologize. I mean 3083, and with our additional resistance is 3108, that's where I get the 8 from, which was a level that we had from last week. But this has been really a pretty poor showing. But we are above here, the 3083. One of the guys in the room, he took half of his position off, and I think he got long right there at the bottom. Holy smokes! But anyway, took half position. I think he's going to let the other part run. But not a bad trade at all. We are seeing the euro recover a bit. We'll get to the euro. And we did hold this area here. We still haven't made it. We haven't tagged the 38%, which is our bias chart resistance, support at 1065. But our resistance is 1130. If we can close above 1130, you can see where I'm coming up right there. You see that right there? If we can close above 1130, as mentioned in the chat room, as far as I'm concerned, although I'm not trading the euro right now, I talked about that yesterday, because we've been trading since just a small range. Thought about scalping it, but scalping it with some size. I haven't bothered with it, but I mean, we've been trading the last few days just in a very, very tight range, and the moves have been to a certain extent predictable. I showed you that yesterday. I wouldn't say straight up predictable, but if you look here, I mentioned this yesterday, you can see on the 5-minute chart, I don't think I'm on that screen, but the moves were just, it was matching the levels just perfectly and would rotate lower. Peso has come off. We had our bias chart support yesterday. Remember, we had it at 1902. Remember last week we had it at 1908. We got down to 1908. We took it out by just a little bit. We rallied a little bit, not much. And then our secondary support, which we had for this week, is 1902. We came down there, and you can see we hit it right to the pip. Just took it out by a little bit. Same thing with the dollar peso. I haven't done anything with the dollar peso, but my whole thing with the dollar peso, just from a technical standpoint, this sucker's a dog. I mean, a dog with fleas. Because like I said, you'd think I had a position on. I was talking my book or something. My point was that after this pullback, we had the 61% just below this, and it was important for this to hold. And even when it held, it didn't really take off. Once it took off, and we came back down, and we've already had multiple discussions. But my take was once we got past 1944, that's it, over, done with, game over, done, finito. And we were going to push lower. I just thought we'd get a little bit of a bounce at 23. We didn't get much of a bounce, less than 7 pips. And then it's been downhill since then, because we had said since early last week, or maybe the end of the prior week, was a daily close below 1923.6. Boom, we're on our way to 1908. And we eventually got to 1908, and then our secondary support, once we got there, was 1902. And this thing's still a dog with fleas. It just couldn't rally to save its life. Getting here with the dollar yen, we'll go look on here. We did get above the bias chart resistance yesterday of 888, and there's some minor at 908. Didn't quite make it there. We stopped at 906. But this key pivot is 927. This has been a pivot for months and months and months. I remember talking to Dale about this when I think it was on the way down. I thought, okay, we're going to make a move down here to 927. And you can see the importance of this pivot going quite a ways back. You can see all the way to May of 2018. So there you go, almost a year and a half away. But obviously with the head of the BOJ, I mean, if this thing gets a daily close, I mean, one single daily close above 927, watch out. We talked about this yesterday. I think we're on our way to 1057 for starters. This thing could really, once again, if this thing gets above that, we could really open the door. And I think Blake talked about that, that it could move much higher. I don't know how much higher. I'm not really looking at, I was just looking at the pivot, and we'll see what happens. Cash dollar index, I've already made my thoughts clear on that pretty much here on the cash dollar index. It's all technicals on here. I'm no fan of the euro, but I'm just going with the dollar index itself, which is, you know, on the way down, I thought we were going to find support at 97.89. That's that huge weekly level. I mean, this goes back to when Moses was crossing the desert almost. And so when we came down, my target was 97.89. I thought we'd get a bounce. The bounce was really, you know, piss poor. I mean, we got a bounce of all of 21 ticks. And we broke below it. This thing is a sell no matter what. And like I said, unless you get a weekly close above 97.89. So as we rallied last week, where did we stop? Right at 97.89. I mean, I think we might have got to 90 or 91, but you can see they close. We've kind of bopped our heads around here. Look, it's a straight up sell until you close. And even if you get a weekly close above 97.89, all it does is negate the short-term bearish picture. It does nothing more. You want to know where the buy, where it turns into a buy? Right there. 98.65. You need a daily close above 98.65 to put this back on the bullish scenario. There's some minor resistance ahead, which is that feeble rally, which is 98.11. But like I said, this is all about just a straight up technicals. Play it from the technicals, you don't have to worry about it. I mean, I do like to incorporate the news. We cover the news in the ForexAnalytix. We usually 2 stories, but kind of gives us the flavor for the day and what the market's looking at. But like I said, dollar has been a tough market to trade, to a certain extent euro, although we saw where the Bunds led us on the way down for euro and on the way back up on the return rally for euro, and then a slide back down. But once again, like I said, to me, just go with the straight up technicals. You don't have to worry about it. As far as I'm concerned, because you let it wiggle around all over the place. We have had a move up here in cable. I'm not going to go into the news. I can't even keep track of all that news. Once again, I'm just going with the technicals here. And to start out the week, our bias chart resistance, and still remains the same, is 29.13. The only difference was we thought that there was a potential we could get down to 27.63, and we've kept that in 27.43 because we have a level there. Where they go? Right there, 27.43. So because the cable has held up so well when they could have easily slipped, we just moved it from 27.43 to today's 27.63, which is the 23%. But the resistance remains the same, 29.13. Big movers of the day. Is obviously crude oil and gold. I talked about this, remember yesterday with the crude oil, and I said, you know, I talked about even remarking that, you know, I could sell this thing with impunity. And because I told you, I think it was 56.30 or 56.34, I said, man, it was 56.36. I said, once it lost that 56.36, that was it. You see right there, there's the 56.36. So once we got a foothold, because we actually got a little bit of a bounce intraday on that 56.36, but once we got a foothold below 56.36, I even mentioned or somewhat joked, I said, hey, you could sell this thing. I could sell this thing with impunity. And we never looked back. I mean, I caught a little bit, not really as much as I should have. But like I said, this was a key level. We talked about on the daily, 57.15. I had already marked this as my first key level for the day in the chat room, which is 56.90. We made it to 91. And I'm talking about on the futures. Well, we came down here, and I actually was able to pick up right here close to lows. I didn't stick around for too long, but we did come back down here to challenge to 54.75, and I missed an excellent opportunity. Really a screwball move on my part. If you look over here on the 15-minute here, notice how these two matched up perfectly, just absolutely perfectly. Look at that, coming right across. It was a beautiful level. I wasn't paying attention. Well, I wasn't paying attention, but it was just I was fooling with some other charts. But we had a nice move, and boy, did we launch like crazy, like bananas. We did get a little bit of a greystone doji here, and I got short on the way up. I think it was 55, 56, I think it was. Anyway, I only got out for like, I think it was 7 pips or something like that, because I thought we were going to run out of gas right there. And my stretch level was really 55, 60 is my stretch level. And I have to go into the 30-minute or into another chart, and I'm not on that one. Well, I can. Well, let's go and move into that. Hang on one moment to show. DK traded in the chat room. He got a far better fill than me, and he was able to make a little bit extra money. But I'm happy to get out because my scenario was wrong. And so here we are. And I was talking about his on the way back up, and I was thinking, hey, look, here's a level because we had held so well on that 54.75. We had a 23% at 55.20, but I thought, okay, we're going to make it up at least to 32. And I thought once those guys and gals weren't even getting paid. And here I thought to myself, they're going to push this thing. And we had resistance at 45. So I thought, okay, 55, 56, boom, that's it. I think I even mentioned in the chat room, I go, I want to see those stops at 55, 55. I thought we'd make it up to 60 maybe, and then we get a sell-off to 37, a minor rally, then a sell-off back to 20, which would coincide with the 23% on the way back. But this thing just kept on going like nobody's business. And I had my stop up above the highs. I think I actually stretched up to 87 because I was still looking for this thing to break lower. But once this thing pulled back, I said, you know what, I'm wrong. Obviously, you might think, well, that isn't a very good stop compared to what your target would be. Well, that wasn't my target to start with. But once again, my thought was go on and get out, don't stretch it, because that's what happened to me a little over a week ago when I came in. But that was a different scenario. That was when it was breaking above 54.88, and I stepped in front of the market, and I actually had an opportunity to get out with a scratch, and I didn't, and I ended up taking a 35 pip tick loss, I think it was. And so I almost came out with the scratch, but I said, you know what, it looks like it's failing. And when I had support at 47, I go, you know what, I'll put it just at like 49. I thought we might even drop down to 45. I think the low in the futures was, it was 45. So I was able to get out, so I was fortunate there. But the other big story was this gold. Holy smokes, man, this gold really came under some kind of trouble. We saw that from Friday. Remember, we talked about the 15. Well, y'all weren't here, but here on ForexAnalytix, I talked about 1508. Excuse me. Actually, on the futures, it translated 1510. I said, watch out. I think we can make it up to 1516. And boy, the wheels really came off the caboose once we got past that, and we saw further follow through. Excuse me, which I thought I was using as a template. That was mentioned in the European crossover webinar for a template for crude today, because I thought crude's going to follow again. And we did see that because crude went to the 54.88 and then went beyond that. Excuse me. But anyway, that being said, I did not see this gold completely coming apart. And boy, we saw some wild swings today. Although we're down here, I did mention in the room, I said, I just don't see gold falling even further, although really it's fell through the basement ahead of FOMC. That being said, I go, bulls aren't being rewarded, and we sat there for quite a while, and then eventually we started to break. We broke up a little bit higher here. It's been kind of wild and woolly. I have not touched it at all. It's probably been a good thing. Probably would have been knocked out of the box one way or the other. You can see here the euro's pairing back, and this is what I was talking about, those levels, how I was just touching the bodies of these levels just perfectly. We actually had on a 30-minute, I think it's 11.13 or something like that, and we kind of paired back from that. And we pulled back down sub 11, and we rallied back up here. It looked like they may make that move for 11.30, but now we're kind of fading back again. So once again, I think the euro has been a tough pair to go in and trade. I mean, it looked like it wanted to go higher. I mean, I thought last week that it was going to weaken when it did. It had the opportunity to make one more run up to, towards the 1190-ish area when bonds made a new low, and it didn't do that. And I thought that was a missed opportunity for the euro. And from there on, it just kept dripping and dripping, dipping and dipping and dripping lower. Let me see. That's about it. We did go and see the SPOOs. We did see the SPOOs make another high, and then they dipped on this whole thing about the pack with Chile, them not signing it and making the concerns about the China news. I don't know. This whole thing keeps on moving up with the China news. But boy, holy smokes, it's been tough if you tried to short this. I mean, you maybe get a scalp move on the way down. Now, on this dip, I had bias chart resistance here on the rebound resistance at 30.38. And you can see they went right past 30.38. I mean, this thing is just something else. And look at the crude oil holding up here, 55.80, 55.84 in the futures. So, I mean, I'm glad I got the heck out of Dodge. And that's what I'm saying. I learned from the mistake I made last week, which was, like I said, I had a chance to, I mean, I didn't scratch this time, but I had an opportunity to scratch, and I didn't scratch thinking, no, it's going to pay me. And look, when you're wrong, the way I trade is when you're wrong, you're wrong. If it doesn't play up to my scenario, then I want to get out. Regardless of where the stop is, I want to go on and get out. And so I gave it some wiggle room in case they were just going to push some stops or whatever. I think one of the guys in the room mentioned gasoline futures were taking off like crazy. That may have added the extra bid. I don't know. I'm not going to be watching cross markets, or I used to do that and follow the gasoline and follow the Brent. You know what? I'm just going to trade the technicals on one market. I mean, I'm talking about the crude oil. That's enough on my hands right there. Than trying to look at what Brent's doing, what gasoline futures is doing. Is like, holy smokes, I'm not going to go there. But like I said, you can see the little bit of a wild and woolly day here with gold. That's all that we have. Thanks for joining us here. And once again, like I said, you may want to consider taking advantage of a trial with ForexAnalytix. It's only $1. You get 10 days. You have access to all the analysis, which is macro, basic technical, candlestick, Elliott Wave, and harmonics, as well as access to the chat room. We have the webinars. We have the European crossover webinar where we set the table for the day with our bias chart and kind of lay those levels out, and so that we can get a set ahead. The European crossover webinar is recorded if you're not available, because it comes on at 4 a.m. Eastern. Stelios makes it available and recording about an hour and a half before the U.S. Open. And even if you're not ready to watch it then, you could still, he has a link, so we're able to go on and watch it and once again see what we're looking at, what's the flavor of the day as far as the economic news that came out in Europe, as well as some news stories from the Reuters feed. So go on and consider, once again, like I said, a 10-day trial with ForexAnalytix for $1. Thanks for joining us, and good luck trading with the rest of the day.